Okay friends, it's time to get started on our job. We're going to have to get underneath this plastic cover, so let's get it out of the way. To remove this, we're going to move over to the oil cap. Go ahead and grab onto that and turn it counterclockwise. We'll give it a quick inspection, make sure the seal's still good. Set that aside. Now we're just going to grab onto this cover, carefully lift it up, and we can get it out of the way. You're going to want to make sure you clean off the top of your engine where all of your ignition coils are going to be. With that cover out of the way, let's move along to this area right here. We're going to use an 8mm to go ahead and turn this until this loosens up enough to slide it off. You don't necessarily have to loosen it till it completely comes apart. Now let's move up to this area. You can pick whichever clamp you'd prefer to remove. I'll go with the one on the engine. Let's continue with a pick and break this free from the engine. Now that that's loose, let's make our way over to the other side. If you were to make your way down underneath this area, you're going to find where the throttle body is located. You're going to find a clamp that holds the intake area to the throttle body. Let's loosen that clamp as well. Now we can carefully grab onto this. We're going to give it a little wiggle and try pulling it up and away from the vehicle, keeping in mind that we do still have a hose that's connected to the engine along this side. We'll give this a quick inspection and we can set it aside. With that out of the way, we have a nice clear view of the throttle body. We're going to have to disconnect the electrical harness for this. The gray area is a locking tab. You just want to use a small screwdriver, carefully pull that locking tab away. Now once it's unlocked, you want to continue on with that small screwdriver or even a pick. We're going to press in on the little tab that's located right here. It's a black tab in between the gray. After that, go ahead and pull this right off. Once you have it off of there, just give it a quick inspection. If you see any funny colors, it's probably corrosion and that would need to be dealt with. Ours looks fine, so I'll set it aside. The next thing that we're going to have to do is take a nice clean rag. I always put it right in the top of the throttle body here without pressing on the flap on the inside. The next thing I like to do is remove any of the debris inside this area. I'm going to cover this port leading into the engine. Once you're sure there's no more dirt or debris inside this localized area, let's continue on to our 4 10mm headed bolts. Now we can break this free from the intake. There it is, friends. With that out of the way, let's have a look at our plastic intake area. On it, you're going to find that you have a seal. Typically, it's a good idea to go ahead and replace the seal. Whether or not you're replacing the seal, you need to go ahead and wipe it down and make sure there's no debris in this localized area. While I'm doing this, I'm making certain that nothing falls down into my air intake. If anything does, you need to make sure you get it out of there. It could be very bad for the engine. Now we can go ahead and install our throttle body. When you do this, you want to make sure you have the electrical connector facing towards the driver's side where the electrical connector is supposed to be located. Now we can take this, we'll set it in position, lining up all 4 of our bolt holes. Before you put in your mounting bolts, just give them a quick inspection. Make sure it doesn't look like they're rotted or damaged in any way. Assuming they look good, we can go ahead and start installing them by hand. Now we can bottom them out, and then we'll torque each of them to 89 inch-pounds. Now we can reconnect in our electrical connector. We're just going to slide this until we hear a click. There it is. Now we're going to lock it in with the gray locking tab. Press that all the way towards the throttle body. Once you have it locked in, give it a good wiggle. Try to pull it off of there. If it falls off, it's not secured properly. Before we continue any further, just double check your work. We torqued all of our mounting bolts, and this is definitely secured. After that, we can go ahead and put on our air inlet housing. We want to pay attention to the bottom of it. You have the area that goes over the throttle body. We have our hose that connects directly to the engine. And then we have our other hose that goes over to the air inlet box. Let's start putting it all back together. I'm going to line this up with the throttle body, and then I'll press it straight down. Once I have that on there, I'm going to make my way over to the hose that leads to the engine. Now we can line this up. At this point, we want to make sure everything's bottomed out. This hose right here needs to be bottomed out as far as it can up against this housing. Let's snug it. Give it a tug to make sure it's completely secured. You do not want any dirty or unmetered air making its way anyway into the engine. We'll move along to this clamp, give it a little squeeze, slide it back into its original position, making sure that the hose is all the way up against the engine. Give that a little tug. Now we can come over here, we'll tighten this last clamp. At this point, I'm just going to grab onto this and I'm going to try as hard as I can to pull it off of the engine. Now that I'm sure this is secured, we can move along to our top cover. Now it's going to be time to get our cover back on here. To do that, let's remove our oil fill cover again. Now to put this cover on here, I just want to show you the bottom. You're going to have a couple rubber grommets. Each of those rubber grommets needs to fit onto their corresponding little pitons that are located on or near the engine. Essentially, it's going to hold this in place. Let's go ahead and get this one lined up back here. Now I'll get this one lined up and press it down. Give it a little wiggle to make sure it's secure. Continue on with the oil cap. Okay friends, we got our throttle body reinstalled in the vehicle. What's left to do now? Now of course you're going to want to start up the vehicle, listen for funny noises, and make sure you don't have a check engine light. Aside from that, thanks for watching.